This week, Epic and Apple are ramping up tensions, Comcast is extending its data cap deadline, and Facebook is proving it's serious in Australia. It's Sunday, February 21st, 2021, and this is episode 588 of F5 Live Refreshing Technology. Wherever you are and however you're accessing our show, whether it be on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Snapchat, through a podcatcher like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, TuneIn, or a myriad of other options, through our live stream platforms, livestream.com, Twitch, Periscope, YouTube, or Facebook, or of course on our website, PLUGHITZlive.com. Thank you for making us a part of your day. There are two ways that you can do that. The first is you can join us live Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern by going to f5live.tv/join us. There you have the ability to chat with us in the studio and give us your feedback on the topics as we talk about them. If you can't do that, you can always go to PLUGHITZlive.com/subscribe, and there you'll see all of our shows, including F5 Live, The Piltch Point, PLUGHITZ Live Presents, and a whole lot more. And of course, find all the ways that you can watch, listen, and follow along. Avram, how are you doing this week?
Oh, not bad. Not bad. I feel like the week went by so fast I didn't really get much done. And I just keep chasing. I feel like the Captain Ahab of Circuit Python or something, because I've been spending a lot of time, because I told my son I trying to be the first person that we know of to get a Raspberry Pi Pico, the new microcontroller board for those who haven't been following, to be a Nintendo Switch controller.
Right.
And I've tried a lot of things and I haven't been able to do it with the Pico. We have with other things. So just yesterday, my son and I were using a regular Raspberry Pi with another microcontroller board called the Trinket, and we're able to control the Switch using the Trinket over USB. And then today, we just found a new Bluetooth library that allows us over Bluetooth on a Raspberry Pi to control the Switch, to act as a Switch controller wirelessly. But using the Pico, which does not have Bluetooth, over USB, we have not been able to do yet. Now, the reason why this is somewhat interesting, and you can do other stuff, is you can take the Pico using Circuit Python. It runs MicroPython, it runs C, C++, and it also runs Circuit Python, which is a special version of Python from the Adafruit company. Anyway, not to belabor the point for people who are not familiar with all the programming languages. The point is you can make it pretend to be a peripheral. So I already can make it pretend to be a keyboard. So imagine you taking something like this, which we were playing with, right? Mm-hmm. And you've got a bunch of buttons on it. You got a joystick hanging off, and you take those buttons, and not only could you make them actually act as a controller, you could make them act as keyboard keys. So to do macros and things like that. Mm-hmm. So, let's say I always want to do a particular thing in a game, like Minecraft, there's some command. I can program it so I can hit the red button here on this. Mind you that this is plugged into my computer, and my computer could see it as a controller, my computer could see it as a mouse, or my computer could see it as a keyboard. But the Nintendo Switch is much pickier than a PC is.
It's definitely a special beast.
That's been the challenge, is getting it to recognize as a Switch controller. But along the way, we learned a bunch of things, and we just learned to do it in Bluetooth. Suggests maybe we don't even bother with this project, although we want to do it, and we start to create a wireless controller. But anyway, that's those are the things my 8-year-old son and I work on. he figured out the Bluetooth thing while I was watching his 2-year-old sister. I pointed him to the library, and he went and he installed it and all that stuff.
Nice.
And he's sitting over here showing me that, like, he had the terminal open and he's typing like left, and it moves the joystick left, moves the thing left on the Switch, and up, and it moves it up. So it's kind of cool. It's not because we couldn't afford to buy a wireless controller for the Switch, or we don't have one.
Sure.
It's because it's to do it, right? And I don't know if I pointed this out last week, but there's a site called, I think I did point it out last week. There's a site called surrogate.tv where you can actually use their software to make your Switch available remotely over the internet. So you, or maybe somebody else even, could remote control it.
Yeah, and we talked about Twitch Plays Pokemon, which was done with a very similar thing based on the comments in the Twitch chat. You could vote to turn left or move forward, and that was ridiculous to watch.
I'm just kind of.
It was more fun. Honestly, it was more fun to watch the fish play Pokemon, where as it swam around in its tank, it would move left and right, and one of my favorite things I've ever. What a waste of time to watch. And it was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I just love the idea of just like creating my own input devices. I think it's kind of fun because you're kind of hacking something that normally you go to the store and you buy a keyboard or you buy a controller, and it's kind of I don't know how this thing works, but so it's kind of cool. I mean, the other thing that I was just falling down the rabbit hole of this week, and I guarantee at some point I'm going to do this project, and it's not a Raspberry Pi project, I really want to build my own keyboard. There's a lot of people who are in that enthusiast community where they buy, this is expensive, they buy like $400 or $500 worth of parts, and they put together a custom keyboard with whatever key switches they want and keycaps they want, and things like that.
Yeah. It's interesting that you're going through this this Nintendo Switch project, because I don't know why I hadn't thought of this until just now. Many years ago, and by that I mean like, oh my god, 20 years ago, a couple friends and I built a DDR pad, a full-size, like, pixel-perfect DDR pad, and then we wired it up into a PlayStation controller so that we could use it on the PlayStation, and then use the PlayStation USB adapter to use it as a custom peripheral into the computer.
Yeah, I mean, it's just fun to be able to, like, to hack the system. Like, the Switch wasn't expecting me.
Well, that's true. The Switch certainly wasn't expecting you.
It was expecting professional stuff like this. It wasn't it wasn't expecting some wires that I slapped together. So
it was expecting Nyko to do something, but maybe not so much you.
Yeah.
My goodness. Well, I am enjoying this project from a distance. I cannot wait to see how it goes, but we've got a lot of stuff to get to tonight, so let's get down to some news. This week's Nifty Gifties and F5 Live is proudly powered by the Microsoft Store. Whether you're looking for a new laptop, a tablet, Xbox games, or a whole lot more, you can find them all at the Microsoft Store. And remember that if you're a student, parent, faculty, or active military, you can get up to 10% off on almost everything. You can find out about those discounts, all the sales that are going on, and a whole lot more by going to f5live.tv/Microsoft. I'm going to apologize up front. If you see me futzing with my ears tonight, is because I've got some new in-ear monitors that I'm testing out, and I don't think I have the right ear tips in. Anyway, so last week we talked about Maryland and their interesting new challenge on the world. They have implemented a new tax on digital ad sales. I think it was last week, right? Maybe it was 2 weeks ago. I don't know.
Yep, I think it was last week we discussed.
Okay, excellent. One of the things that we said during the show was that there was no way that this would not be contested nearly immediately, and we were right. Just like when the internet sales tax went into effect, it was contested by tech groups, particularly digital retailers. This has been contested as well. A collection of tech groups representing a lot of companies filed suit against Maryland, claiming, among other things, that it is deeply flawed and, my favorite, illegal in myriad ways. Which is a fascinating set of words to use in a legal document.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out. I mean, it certainly doesn't. I mean, having gone over this when we talked about this last week, I mean, the tax is supposed to apply if you have to how many people in the state saw the ad versus the transaction of buying the ad, which I guess if you think about it is a little bit odd. Well, more than a little bit odd, because an ad is nothing more than a commercial. An ad on the internet is nothing more than a commercial in digital format.
Sure.
Right? Whether it's a video or not. If I watch a national network and they're playing an ad, like I watch the Super Bowl and there's a nationally sold ad there, my local state doesn't get a cut of that ad revenue unless, of course, the transaction unless, of course, the company that sold the ad or is in the state. It seems like the normal way to handle this is through sales tax on buying the ads, which I don't know. Is there sales tax on buying an ad?
I do not believe so.
I mean, that's a service. You normally pay sales tax on services, right? So now granted, Maryland probably wouldn't be seeing a lot of that revenue, but it might see some. If there's a Maryland-based business that buys it, then they would be paying the sales tax. But if I'm a New York-based business, I buy an ad from Google, whose home base I believe is California, then they're not getting any money out of it if a viewer in Maryland sees it. But, kind of too bad, because, I mean, unless, money comes from a federal sales tax or something, because it's just weird to go by where the person is, right? It's also another thing that's really inherently very flawed and hard to track, because what about people who are on VPN?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was one of the things we talked about last week is the reporting would have to be self-reporting, because only Google, Facebook, Amazon, only they know who they're serving ads to. Nobody else has that information. It's not like what's the company that does television watch statistics.
Nielsen.
I had an S in my head. It's not like Nielsen is, independently verifying viewership numbers on digital ads, right? It would have to be self-reported, which would be a weird starting point. And the whole of the internet is going VPN for so many reasons. Everybody's mad at big tech right now, and VPNs are the way a lot of people are dealing with it. There's so many issues here. I understand what they're going. I understand what they're going after. I understand the revenue that they're looking for, but it's just such flawed. Yes, illegal. I don't know, but definitely the system definitely has flaws inherent in it.
It also is a little weird, and I like strategically it makes sense, and it certainly is more fair, right? But they are limiting this to companies only with a certain amount of revenue. right? So that is an area where it's interesting. Can you have a law that discriminates? Like, it's not an income tax. It's not like, oh, if you make above this level, we're charging you income tax on it. It's a tax, but it's only being applied to companies that have a certain amount of revenue
on advertising.
And then the other thing is how do you, like, there could be all kinds of people who are outside your jurisdiction as well. Well, first of all, there's an interesting question as to whether, like, Google would be within the jurisdiction of Maryland. Like, what are they going to do? How are you going to collect?
Right.
Like, unless Google has an office there or something, like, what are you going to do to them?
Right.
Now, let me put this to you in a completely other way. The World Wide Web is international.
Right.
So if I go and I view an ad, if I go and visit a British website from Maryland, are they going to try to collect from a British company? Like, I mean,
interesting.
The logistics of it are, and like, if you're not in a state, how are you to know that the laws apply to you? Like, it sounds, so it does sound like it would be applied very unevenly, because
True.
How are you going to inform people? Like, obviously Google and Facebook, it's very easy to inform them.
Right.
Hello, Google, Facebook, the state of Maryland is calling and we want to tell you that there's now a new tax.
Right.
But like,
even the big ad networks, link share, in something with an I can't. Impact used to be Impact Radius. They're all going to be falling under this revenue number, and so it would be easy to contact them. But where does the Daily Wire fit in? Right? Do they fit into the number? Are they selling enough ads for all of their shows in the number to fall in? And if so, how do you know unless they self-report?
And also, if it becomes a problem, it's a very easy situation to rectify when it's only Maryland, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, am I in trouble if I show this amount of? Also, how are you measuring my revenue? That's another. I mean, I haven't read the exact text, but how are they going to decide what the revenue is for this? So, like, Google is a publicly traded company, so we have a sense of their revenue. But on the other hand, are they going to specifically drill down into ad revenue, or is it all the money that Google makes from anything, or is it all the money that your company makes from anything? Is all that revenue? Like,
no, it's just ad revenue.
Okay. And the other thing, though, is it'd be very easy to avoid this. Oh, okay. If this is going to be a problem, I'm not going to run ads in Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's probably.
Yeah. Or we get into a Facebook Australia situation, right? There's all kinds of possibilities, because if you're well, you and I both have our revenues largely based on advertising dollars. Yeah. All of a sudden, Google says they're not running ads on our site in Maryland.
Yeah, that would be worse for us than it would be for Google. Google can take the hit.
And so maybe content stops showing up in Maryland in a Facebook Australia kind of a way, which we'll talk about in a little while. There's so many weird side effects.
It's kind of a disaster, but also I think when you think about the principle of it, like, I'm thinking about this, I think worse about this now than I did last week. I guess because I'm seeing this in a little bit different light.
And you've had a week to let it bounce around the back of your head. Yeah. Because I'm in a different place today than I was a week ago.
I mean, like, I get what that like, look, there's a company that's making a lot of money off the citizens in that state, and hey, we want them to contribute. But the problem is the way that this is being applied is very strange. It's also, in effect, if I talk about illegal, in a way it's taxing speech, isn't it? Aren't we taxing speech? We're not taxing a transaction. We're taxing speech, because an ad is speech.
it's taxing a transaction based on the percentage of showings in the percentage of the transaction that applies to the state. I bet that's the way they argue it. Just a guess.
Yeah, I guess. But it's commercial speech, right? So, and if this were applicable, then shouldn't it also apply to other media? So if I sell a newspaper and a whole bunch of people, like the New York Times is sold all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say 10,000 people buy New York Times in Maryland. Does that mean that the New York Times company now has to cut a check to the state of Maryland for all of the print ads that they sold?
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of problems, and based on this conversation, illegal may apply here. The fact that it's not the law doesn't apply universally could be argued as discrimination. This is going to be fascinating to follow. Yes.
So we'll have to see. I think if they're trying to go after that ad revenue, what should happen, and I'm not saying this is a good idea, but the fair thing would be to put some kind of federal transaction tax on the buying of the ad, like a sales tax if there's not already, and then have the sales tax be distributed out by the federal government to the states, but not based on viewership, because viewership is like that's internal data that's also somewhat proprietary sales data too. Like I don't know they want to be sharing that with the government.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because we're going to talk about that in a little bit in our Extra Life segment, about the government possibly compelling a company to give up proprietary sales information. So great tie-in. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of problems here. This case is not going to be short. I guarantee a federal injunction gets a stay gets put in place here until this case goes through probably several layers. And I think we said it last week. This likely makes it to the Supreme Court. I would not be surprised, because there's only two other courts that could hear this. So it doesn't take long. It's not like, a criminal case that has layers and layers and layers of courts before the Supreme Court. There's only, I think, 2 layers before that. There's a federal court and a federal appellate court, and then you've got your Supreme Court. So this wouldn't take long to get to them, and I guarantee they'd hear it. This is going to be a long process, and I think we will follow it. Maybe not in detail every step of the way, but we will definitely follow it for as long as it goes on. This week's Piltch Point with Avram Piltch is proudly powered by PureVPN. The best way to protect your privacy online is with PureVPN. You can hide your online activities, say goodbye to regional restrictions, and improve your streaming quality. Plus, it is available for almost all of your devices, and you can get a special price right now by going to piltchpoint.live/PureVPN. All right. So, 2021 is becoming a bit of a hands-on year for Piltch Point episodes, because I think you've got something else to show us tonight.
Yes, I do. So this notebook here is the ThinkPad X1 Nano. This is one of the newer ThinkPads around. It's been out for a few weeks now. So this is a 13. This is a super duper light and thin notebook here. We've before talked about the X1 Carbon, which is 14 inches and weighs 2.5 pounds. This is a 13-inch notebook that weighs 1.99 pounds. So really 2 pounds, but they want to say 1.99 because that sounds better. It on the inside here, we have all the amenities that you expect from a ThinkPad. The keyboard has the fantastic ThinkPad feel that a lot of people, including me, love. It has the track point for navigation and a touchpad for those who don't like the nub. Shame on you. You should all like the nub. The 13-inch screen is a very interesting resolution. This is a 16 by 10 screen, and it is 2160 by 1350. So it is an interesting aspect ratio.
Indeed.
And it is, so you're getting a lot of screen real estate, and it is extremely bright. It is marketed as 450 nits, and normally when something says it's some amount of nits, it's a lot less when we average it out from all the corners. But this one came up on our test of 430 nits, so that's pretty good. Super bright, pretty colorful, not the most colorful. It hits 101% of the sRGB color gamut, which is pretty decent, and but just 71% of the wider DCI P3 color gamut, so decent. It comes with a 11th generation Intel processor, either a Core i5 or a Core i7 with 4 cores and 8 threads. It has 8 or 16 gigabytes of memory, and forget about upgrading it, so definitely get it with 16. Comes with an SSD up to, well, it's either 256 up to, I think you can get it with 2 terabytes, but generally 1 terabyte is probably the most you would want to get because it gets more expensive. It gets, despite its thinness, it's 0.55 inches. It gets 12 hours of battery life. So really good battery life, really fantastic keyboard. And the keyboard just feels great, and just really thin and light, and a very bright, sharp display with lots of room for work. Their performance is good. Obviously not great for gaming because it uses Intel Iris Xe integrated graphics, so it's not going to get, you don't want to do a lot of gaming on it. The one really big disadvantage of this is the ports. So this, because it's so thin, it only has, this is all it's got. Let me see if I can get that in front of the camera. All it's got are two Thunderbolt 4 ports and your one lonely headphone jack. So, and one of these ports you're going to use for charging, although you could charge and dock over the same port. So if you were out and about and somebody handed you a USB stick with some data on it, you would need a dongle. But other than that, this has a really nice soft touch finish on it. Feels really premium, even on the bottom here. Reminds me a lot of my X1 Carbon, which I own one and have used happily for a couple of years. But it's thinner, lighter, and it's lighter by a lot. And I actually like the smaller display because it allows me, it balances better on my lap. And it just feels like, hey, when I'm typing on this, it's like, wow, this is just like, it's so small and so it's so, compact. The fact that it uses the 16:10 aspect ratio means it's taller and less wide, which is just, but there's plenty of room on the keyboard anyway. So it's just really great for, you could easily stuff it in a bag. You can easily easily balance it on your lap, easily kind of tuck it, put it somewhere without, without it taking up too much space. I mean, that would be a concern for me when nowadays I'm typing on the couch and then my daughter's trying to climb all over me and my son's in my face and it's like, oh, they're going to knock my laptop over. They keep knocking into me. Well, smaller one, it's a little bit easier to balance and keep out of the way. And, this just really incredibly light. Keyboard feels fantastic. And it just has a great productivity feel to it. I think in ways even better than the 14-inch one that I own. The one downer that would hold me back from getting it is that it is the port situation. Also, it's, at the moment, because it's a fairly new product, doesn't come cheap. So the starting price is $13.50 or so. And for that, you get it with 8 gigs of RAM, a 256 gig SSD, and a Core i5. So I would at least get the one with 16 gigs of RAM and a 512 SSD, and that's $17.27. And the one that I have in my hand here has a Core i7 processor instead of a Core i5, so that brings it to $18.47. Not cheap, although with sales and things like that, I wouldn't be surprised to see something with this configuration selling for under $1,500 at some point. So it's really, really great productivity system.
Nice. And did you say it's already available?
Yes, it's already out. It's been out for a few weeks. You can get it at Lenovo.com, where you can custom configure. It. The main options that you have are just really how much, what processor you have, which is really just a Core i5 or a Core i7. How much RAM, which is 8 or 16. What size SSD, which is up to a terabyte, and that's it. They all come with the same screen. Oh, the highest end model comes with a slightly faster processor, and with a anti-smudge touch. Oh, and with a touch screen. If you pay for the $2,200 model, you can get a touch screen. I personally wouldn't bother getting a touch screen on a laptop like this.
Okay. So a bit of a range in price, but like you said, it's still pretty new, so it's naturally going to be a little higher in price.
Yep. But it's for those who really like to work on the go, and on the go might even be on your couch. This is really, really convenient and light, and I just love the size of it. I've been using a 14-inch, and this 13-inch is it fits better. It's really nice and compact. So, and I have to say that my laptop lifestyle has changed over the last year, as probably a lot of people's has.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to use my laptop for everything, including when I was sitting at my desk, and I would take it back and forth with me to the office and everything like that. Now that, I'm home because of working from home all the time, I've invested in getting a desktop in my home office. I don't use my laptop at all in here, because powering 4 monitors, I get a lot better performance out of a desktop.
Sure.
But my laptop, I still have a lot of use for it, because there are those times when I got to go in the living room and watch the kids, because I don't want them climbing all over in here, or whatever. And I grab my laptop for that. And having a compact laptop with long battery life is convenient, even within the home. So we will have a dedicated detailed review up of this this week on tomshardware.com. But I figured I would show it to everybody beforehand and say, this is actually a really good laptop, and I really like it.
I'm becoming a fan of that soft touch Obviously, longtime viewers of the show before this got pushed off to the side and out of frame with the studio redesign know that, I've got my Surface Book, and it is anything but soft touch. It is very cold and kind of weird sometimes. And one of my laptops up in the office has that soft touch to it, and I've really grown to like it. I didn't think I was going to.
Yeah. That's actually a really key feature, because it's not just like a luxury that you're touching it and it's got a soft touch. The palm rest is soft touch. So this area here where you're resting your wrists is it's not as soft as it could be, but it's pretty soft. So that's good, because when you're typing all day on it, your wrists are digging in, and so having like hot metal or hard, if it gets warm, hot metal under your wrist, or especially, I hate laptops that have a sharp front lip that start cutting, like digging into you.
Yeah.
That stuff really matters. For some folks, maybe they don't care, but for me, it matters a lot. Here at my desk with my external keyboard, every day, all day, it's, gel rest. So when I pick up a laptop, I want to come as close to having that soft, cushion under my wrists as I possibly can. And the best I can do, because you can't really use a gel rest with a laptop,
sure,
is to have soft touch.
I think after I got this, I showed at CES one time where I had creases right in my wrist, because this has the ultimate in sharp front edges for anybody who's ever held one. They are super sharp, and over time they actually chip a little bit and get terrible. It's like a serrated knife. So I'm always looking for something that has that feature to it. And it's so weird, because even just a couple of years ago, it wasn't really like a conscious thing in my mind, and today it's so important.
Yeah. And that's a premium material. That's one of the reasons why you're paying so much for this, is that you're getting that really premium material that it's made out of, which is like I think it's made out of, I'm pretty sure it's made out of magnesium alloy, but it's really the soft touch paint that gives it that feel. So because it's so light in your lap, because it's so soft, it's just like, oh, this is so pleasant to have on my lap and to use on your lap. And I can really see, like, if I was in a pre-COVID, hopefully post-COVID world, if you were in a crowded place, like I've been at press conferences where I had people like jammed up against me, like having something that doesn't really hang off your lap much, that you've got a lot of like free space is really nice.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I look forward to reading the review on this. Obviously, already it's sounding like it's going to be a pretty positive review, but I always enjoy the details. You said that'll be this week?
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to it, and as always, I look forward to what you bring next time. Uh-oh. I don't remember how to use my computer anymore. There we go. This week's Extra Life on F5 Live is proudly powered by Razer. Get all the accessories you need to up your game on your PC, console, or mobile device. From Razer, whether you're looking for a gaming mouse and keyboard like we use here in the studio, a webcam and light for your Twitch stream, or an entire gaming setup, you can find it all at Razer by going to f5live.tv/Razer. definitely still getting used to the changes that I've made to myself. Anyway, so we've talked a lot about the Epic versus Apple battle showdown. It keeps expanding. It keeps getting weirder. This week it took two turns in very different directions. The first is that Epic has officially filed its suit in the European Union, which means that the US, the UK, Australia, and the EU are all independently involved with versions of this suit. The details of it haven't really changed. The wording changes based on where it is, and the aspect of the case that they think that the region is most likely to respond to. In the EU, there's a lot more talk about monopoly because, not the game, because the EU responds very strongly to monopolistic behavior. So it makes sense that they would do that here. But in general, the argument is the same. Apple has every right to control what is in its app store, but it does not have the right to control what users can do with the device they've purchased. So that will be moving forward in parallel with the three other versions. But the real interesting thing that happened this week was the revelation that Apple has, and I said earlier that we would get to this, Apple has subpoenaed a bunch of information from Valve, who's not involved in this case. Like a ton of information. Now, a couple things to keep in mind here. Valve, not involved in the case. Valve, private company, not public company. And so they have requested, and by request I mean demanded, that Valve identify from 2015 to the present every version and all digital content or items for each of the games of these games, which we'll get to in a second, on Steam, then provide exhaustive information about all of them. And that's a quote from the actual demand, including they want things like sales dates, prices, price changes, gross revenue for each game, which again I'll get to in a second, and each version of the game. They want gross revenue broken down by update for each update of each game. And all of Valve's revenue related to these games. Now, what games? 436 games that are available on both the Epic Games Store and Steam. Interestingly, Apple's argument for wanting this data has been around the other platforms on which Fortnite appears, of which Steam is not. So it's all very interesting. Valve responded by saying, we've put some information together here, but a lot of this we don't track because as a private company, it's never had value to us. So if you wanted to ask Samsung, who does have Fortnite in their store, this information, you could, and they probably have it. But we don't, because we don't care. It doesn't provide us any value, so we've never had it. And Apple said, thanks for the document that you did give us, except they're all redacted to the point where there's no information available. So obviously Valve is pissed off to have been dragged into this. That's what I'm getting here.
What gives Apple the right to demand information, private information from a company that they're not suing? Like that, I mean, my understanding, and I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on TV, is that anyone can issue a subpoena to anyone for anything, but whether you have to comply with the subpoena is another story.
Right. And unless compelled by a court, which has not happened.
Right. So
there has been no court demand here. Valve said, here's some information. These are the reports that we do track. We're going to remove stuff that's not related to what you asked about, which is why they're so heavily redacted. But you're on your own for this other stuff, because it's not information we care about. So we've never tracked that data, which makes sense to me. I don't necessarily care about every, hundredth of a, third or fourth position of a version number of a game, and whether or not, unless it's my game. If it's my game, I might be interested. But
it seems like proprietary information, though.
Absolutely,
let's take this argument. It's funny to me that Valve's argument is we don't need it, and that could be true. But their first argument should be why we don't owe it to you,
right?
And maybe they're trying to be nice to Apple or something, but then it wouldn't have made the news, I guess, right? It's not their job to help Apple make a case against Epic,
right? Unless they see a chance here to harm Epic, but that doesn't seem like what it is.
That might be
because they don't seem to be going out of their way to comply. They're like, yeah, all right, so those games, we think these numbers apply to those games. You're on your own from here.
But just FYI, as a journalist, there's lots of information like this that would be cool for me to report. Right?
Sure.
I would love to go and ask any company that I want for all kinds of revenue and sales numbers, right? It would be wonderful. I would probably get, some great scoops if I could just go to companies and get really detailed information,
right,
that is not out there, right? Oh, hey, Intel, could you tell me how much of each CPU you sold?
Sure.
I don't think that's in any of the public documents.
No. The best you can do is use IDC for reports from retailers.
There are analysts,
and even
there are analysts who get some of this information, and some of it I can get from them. Others people pay a lot of money for, right, is behind paywalls because people pay a lot of money for. Mm-hmm. So what? I wouldn't get a redacted thing. They just would tell me no, or I wouldn't respond if I sent to some companies this kind of request. So
your email address would go on a blacklist.
Yeah, you can't just go around demanding people's internal stuff. That's crazy. They have no obligation,
especially
to help Apple.
Especially if you take into consideration that on Macs, they're competitors. Apple and Epic, or Apple and Steam are competitors on the Mac because they both offer a game store. So they literally have no reason to help out. Yeah,
there's no, and if they were friendly, if this were friendly, it wouldn't have been a subpoena, right? So
maybe I don't know. I don't know if it would have been admissible if it wasn't subpoenaed. In fairness, I don't.
Oh, okay. But weird. Even so, it's not
weird court
stuff.
I
understand they would love to have this data. They would love to be able to dig through this data to make some kind of case about how, I don't know, maybe they're adding value by putting someone in their store and therefore they're entitled to their 30%, which is, even if that were the case, that doesn't answer the question of why you don't allow other software to be out from outside of your store to be installed on your phones. So there's really nothing, anything they put from Valve, I think would be kind of beside the point anyway. What would they get from the sales data that they could use as an argument?
Especially when the argument that they seem to be trying to make is around other locations where Fortnite is available. Since the case has initially centered around Fortnite, Apple's argument has been around the market viability of other locations where Fortnite is available, and Steam's not one of those places. go call Samsung, right? Because I think it's still in the Samsung marketplace, whereas it's not in Google,
So,
I think. But
so here's what I don't understand. What would they do with that if they got the information from Samsung of how many people downloaded Fortnite from Samsung? What would they do with it?
I have no idea. I I really think at this point that Apple is grasping that from things like this, and this is not the first weird thing that I've heard on this case. I'm starting to feel like that Apple's panicking a little bit and grasping for any argument they possibly can, because I don't think they have a leg to stand on legally here, and I think they know it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the question for Apple is whether the FTC in the US will actually enforce antitrust law, because there's not been very aggressive enforcement of it
Right.
in a long time. And look what happened to Microsoft after years and years about the Internet Explorer. There was a very mild slap on the wrist, and then I think it did have to be debundled in Europe. So in Europe, there's more likely to be some consequences for Apple. But
yeah, and that's why tonight started the way that it did, with them filing in the EU, because I think they're hoping they can get a bit of a snowball rolling, because Europe moves quick on antitrust stuff and they move harshly. So if they can get a ball rolling there, maybe they're hoping to see, Australia follow suit, who can also be pretty quick and harsh, as we've talked about on weird topics in the past. So they're definitely taking a global approach to this, and Apple seems to truly be grasping for an argument to their case, because we've talked, how does Microsoft and Sony have an argument to preventing certain activities on Xbox and PlayStation? Well, you can do those things, but you may lose access to Xbox Live or PlayStation Network. You can do whatever you want to it. There might be consequences outside, right? You may not be able to interact with other people with whom you can damage their experience, but on your own device, do what you want. Have fun. Good luck. Bye-bye. So even there, they're like, we don't care. You want to open it up and lick your hard drive? We don't care. It doesn't bother us at all. You do what you want to do. But Apple, they've got their T1 chips in their laptops, that if you open your laptop yourself now, you still have to run it through their software to be able to get it to boot again. I mean, there's so much going on here, and I think this is going to be the first of many issues that they can't justify. So we'll see. Like we said earlier, this is just the beginning on this, and it keeps getting more interesting, and there's no way we don't keep following this. This week's news from the tubes and F5 Live is proudly powered by RiffTrax. Make fun of movies, or let these guys do it for you. Mike Nelson, Bill Corbett, and Kevin Murphy, the former stars of Mystery Science Theater 3000, are back and doing what they do best, making fun of Hollywood blockbusters and B-movie oddities. It's like watching a movie with your funniest friends, and to find out about all of the full-length features, the short films, the TV episodes, and the live events that are coming up, you can get all of that by going to f5live.tv/RiffTrax with an X. All right, because tonight is all about follow-ups. Let's talk about Comcast and their data caps. We talked about this last year. We had a report that showed that during lockdown, the number of people who were considered power users had just right in the range of doubled the number of people which is somebody who uses more than a terabyte of bandwidth per month, which I can tell you just based on my data speeds for this show, just doing this show would put us pretty close. But that has almost doubled. The superpower users, I think is what they were called, had nearly tripled, which is users that use more than 2 terabytes of data. And seemingly almost in response to this report that we talked about, Comcast announced that they would be rolling out their data caps to the rest of their customers. Previously, it had been only applied to certain states, and they had announced that they would be rolling it out to all states in which they operate. Then the backlash came, and they said, oh, we're going to push it off a little bit. We're going to give people a couple of months to adjust and prepare and determine where they fall. Okay. And that initial pushback expires in March. The new data caps were supposed to go into place in March, basically on everybody's next bill, because it is the 21st. Most people are going to get their next bill in the next month. So they would be under those data caps. Well, once again, based on pressure and not because they wanted to, Comcast has announced that they are moving that date back again. To when? At least 2022? What does that mean? It could be January 1st. It could be December 31st. We've got no idea. It could be 2080. At least 2022 does not give us any information, which of course is going to put people on edge, knowing that at some point this is coming. When? Shh, don't worry about it. But you know, talk about bad optics, right? We're in the middle of lockdown. Everybody's data usage is going up. You and I did math on the show a couple of months ago that showed in a family of 4, if everybody does their own solo and only does their own solo 3 hours of HD video per day, you've hit your data cap. That does not include conference calls. That does not include video games. That does not include virtual school. None of that. Just 3 hours of HD video per person per day, and you hit that data cap. So this is totally bad optics, and I think it caught up with them because they did not. The wording of this announcement was not, we've seen the error of our ways. It seemed annoyed, even in a public release like this. They seemed annoyed.
Okay, so I was just thinking about this. So this doesn't come from Zoom. This comes from a site. I was just Googling this, so I can't verify this, but there's a site called reviews.org, never heard of it before, that has a page which breaks down Zoom data usage per hour. And it claims that for a group call, one-to-one calls are less, but for a group call, it at 1080p, it will be 2.4 gigabytes per hour. At a 720p, it would be 1.35 gigabytes per hour. But let's assume people are, so let's say that this is my son's class. I think they actually use WebEx, but a lot of places use Zoom.
That's
double
the bandwidth that we use for this show. Just putting that into perspective.
So maybe this is for a group call.
Yeah.
So maybe this is for a one-to-one. It claims 1.6 per hour. This is both up and down, right?
Okay. So okay. Yeah. Because I'm only showing up. Never mind. Keep going. I'm not. Right. It claims your incoming doesn't count into this.
50% of up. 50% is up and 50% is down, according to this. So I don't know if that's accurate, if that's really accurate, but according to this estimate, it's 1.2 gigabytes an hour down, 1.2 gigabytes an hour up. So that's a class, right? That's my son being in school.
Sure.
So to put this in some perspective, right? he's in school every day. He does virtual school every day from about 8:30 to 3, and he gets an hour for lunch. So that's 5.5 hours a day. So, right. So if we multiply 5.5 hours, how many school days do you think? Let's assume there's no holidays in the
22.
month. That would be 22 school days, right?
Yeah.
So 5.5 times 22 is 121 hours times 2.4 gigabytes. That is 290.4 gigabytes for one child to go to school for a month.
Yeah.
That is a quarter of
almost a
the
third.
data cap.
Oh, yeah,
But
because it's 1.2. It's 1.2. Yeah. They changed it from 1.0 to 1.2.
Right. So that's one child,
Mm-hmm.
right? What if you have 2 or 3 children?
Right.
Like, it's this is something that children like need to go to school, and people need to go to work,
Mm-hmm.
and they are paying for it, by the way, right? Like, some would argue that internet is almost like a human right.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to school and you need it to go to school, like, school,
it's even more so.
If you don't go to school, every child, at least in the United States, has not only the right to go to school, but the obligation to go to school. Like, if you don't go, you're a truant,
Mm-hmm.
right? And your parents get hauled into get investigated, and you could be taken away.
Yeah.
And that's happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's happened to kids who are not able to log onto the internet for virtual school.
Right.
So,
and we've seen kids that have, to avoid it, have gone and sat outside of a Taco Bell to use their Wi-Fi.
Right. So, I mean, that's just, I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous. And then you have people who, they're going to need the internet to make a living,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, a lot of jobs are not going to, like, school hopefully will come back to being in person for everyone. We'll be safe enough for that in a while, but
right.
work, some of the jobs that have gone to work from home will never go back to being in-person jobs. So
my main client has given up their office.
So this is a necessity, like water, and now granted, you pay for your water, you pay for your electric, those are necessities, not luxuries too. You pay for your heat, that's a necessity, you can't live without it. So I mean, it's all kind of part of modern living that people pay for their necessities, but this is something people need, and they're gouging it, and it's wrong. And other companies don't do this, which proves that they don't need to do it. It's amazing what's happened with the cost of communication. Again, this is something I would love to know what it actually costs someone like a Comcast or a Verizon or whatever to provide internet to someone. Like, does it actually cost them more if I use more? Or is it just kind of iteratively, people are using more, they're going to end up using more of their resources in general, if as trends go up, as more. But you know what, they got to prepare for that, and if that means that it's harder for them to run their business, and they got then raise everybody's prices by a few dollars. Nobody likes that, but well, I mean,
they do. In fairness, Comcast did announce as part of this they did have new plans that were going into place that would have either higher or no caps on them for those power users. So, but we're seeing those numbers ticking up, right? When we talked about it, we were at 9.5%. I think was that report,
yeah.
And that was 4 months ago. It was well before the holidays. So
the other thing
that hasn't gotten better. And by the way, I have to I have been doing my math totally wrong on our show. We blow those numbers away.
Right.
We're doing 50 gig an hour.
This is also, by the way, this is also terrible for, like, it's terrible for commerce. It's terrible for education. It's terrible for everything. Like, forget even for a second how many people blow past the cap, right? Let's say it's only 10% that blow past the cap. Still, think about the, I don't know what you want to call it, cap anxiety that people must have. Oh, I'm worried about blowing past my cap. I guess I won't sign up for Netflix.
Right.
I guess I won't watch as much.
And we all
I guess
remember
I won't
that.
rent this movie.
We all remember that from the early days of smartphones. There's kind of caps and kind of not now. They're based on speed, not cutting you off entirely or charging you ridiculously, and the numbers are high. But I mean, I remember having customers, because I was in wireless sales at that time. I remember customers who weren't using big portions of their phones because they were worried about the caps. And
right, if you have to think about it, then it's a problem.
Exactly.
If you should, it's not even like, oh, do you actually hit the cap? It's like, oh, if I have to think about it, it's a problem.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
It's unpredictability of the bill. So if I have to think about it, then I'm not going to do it. I mean, the funny thing is, what we've learned over time is that as each new form of communication comes out, we realize that we were being bilked on the old one because it becomes cheap or free, right? So it's funny to me, even recounting to my son, that we used to have to worry about long distance phone calls, right?
Yes.
All of the drama that I went through earlier in my life about the cost of long distance phone calls, when to call people after a certain hour of night, which long distance carrier did you want? Was it Sprint or MCI or AT&T? Which one gave you the best deal, right? And even within your local area, you have to think about, well, is this person in my exchange, or are they long distance or regional? All that stuff that you all went through. And then when cell phones come out, all of a sudden it was like, oh yeah, by the way, you can call anywhere and it's the same price. Right. So in other words, we didn't care. Right. This actually didn't cost us that much, because now even if I had a cell phone that had limited minutes, which I think would have to be like a burner phone at this point, because every plan has unlimited. Even the plans that probably still have limited data have unlimited calling, because the calling is now free because nobody cares.
Do you remember paying 10 cents a text message?
Yeah, right. So then the text messages, and now you get these. You still get, whenever I sign up for something that sends me SMS messages, I get a little disclaimer like, we're just warning you that you're going to pay for these alerts, and you may be charged by your phone company.
Charges and fees may apply. Nobody does that anymore. It's like, I understand.
Nobody does that anymore.
If you're sending this to track phone, I get it. But
right. So, but it used to be a big deal.
Right.
This is bogus. They don't need to do this. And the fact that their competitors aren't doing it is proof.
Yes.
That they don't need to do this.
Right. Exactly.
This is a gouge, and the real problem here is that there's not enough competition to make them stop gouging. There's not enough broadband competition.
Although if Elon Musk has his way, there will be.
Well, and in the absence of competition like this, when you have a monopoly, then you may have to be treated as a public utility.
Yeah.
And regulated accordingly. Like the electric, here in New York anyway, the electric company is a public utility. They cannot raise rates or do things without approval of the government. They can't just, like, decide whatever they want to do. Unlike some apparent electric companies in Texas, which billed people $15,000 for like a week of electricity.
Yeah.
But without warning them. But or some they were warned, but they had no other alternative.
Right.
So what are you going to do? The situation is that this is terrible. The optics are bad, but the practice is bad, and we need to start thinking about this the way that we think of other public utilities, unless there's significant competition. For logistics reasons, there's really not. I don't know about, maybe there's some places where there's competition, but most places there's no competition for your electricity. You have to use the local electric company. There's very little competition for your heating. Maybe you have oil and gas or something. But so there's no competition for your water.
Right.
Those have to be regulated, because otherwise they could just do whatever they want.
Right. Because they've got
have no alternative.
Because they have all of the leverage, at least like where our studio is now, right? And it's such a change, because we used to talk about, where the old studio was. I used to say all the time, I only had one choice. And now I have so many choices, it's unbelievable. And I now understand why the service where I was worked, because it was only in our property that we were limited. Here, I have at least 4 choices on service providers, and that doesn't include HughesNet or Starlink or whatever it's called. I've got 4 hardwire choices here, so everybody's legitimately competing. Prices are going down. When I went
home,
when I went to cancel my home TV cable, they're like, hey, how about, and they offered me this thing I had never heard about. How about for $10, we'll give you any 10 channels plus your locals, your choice. Yes, please.
I have to call and do that with mine. I just wish you didn't have to play these games.
I know.
Where you have to threaten to leave to get decent prices.
Yeah.
Because it is a hassle to change back and forth.
But that's the thing, we've talked about a lot. That's the thing that not everybody has. It's a real hassle here because all the cables are cut in the in the property. They had to run a new one when we moved in. But anyway, I'm fortunate. Most people aren't as fortunate as I am to have this many choices in providers. A lot of people, especially if you're in a condo or an apartment, you've only got the choice of the company that has signed a contract with the building owners. Yep.
That's when I lived in an apartment. We only had one choice.
Yeah, me too. So, this problem is pervasive. It's a problem. Comcast is proving why they're always in the top 3 most hated brands in the country, with stuff like this. But I don't know. I'm with you. I think when this show first got started, we had a whole thing about Congress letting actual net neutrality, not the thing that we started calling net neutrality a couple of years ago, when they let that lapse, because that happened about 6 months after we started the show in 2007. We were pissed, because this was the inevitable end. And here we are. So somebody needs to get involved. Congress needs to get involved. But
now, one thing I will say, that is very contrary to what I'd normally say. Net neutrality means that they don't discriminate against different traffic. But the solution to this problem, not that I like it, is for Comcast to discriminate on traffic. Like maybe maybe they should be discriminating between luxury traffic and like necessity traffic. So video,
like
if
like
you're
what
talking
T-Mobile,
about,
like what T-Mobile did or does, where certain things didn't come out of your data usage.
right, exactly. So maybe like video conferencing shouldn't come out of your account.
Yeah.
Maybe because people are using it for school and work.
Right.
Maybe, maybe even video streaming shouldn't come out. I mean, that would be my argument. But things that people consider to be, I don't know, power user things like torrenting,
Sure.
maybe torrenting should come out of your account.
Yeah, I could see that, and I think that would be a middle ground that could be found, but I don't know. It doesn't sound like the kind of thing that Comcast is going to go for. They're going to keep fighting this for as long as they can until somebody kicks them. Musk might be the guy who does it. Google's got something similar in the works. Facebook's got their balloons. Just such a funny thing to say out loud. There's alternate ideas that are out there, and we talk about this during CES, right? The whole thing about Eureka Park is the mad scientist crazy ideas,
Yeah.
and sometimes they turn into something, and those are what those are. Except for Starlink, which is, I think this is what it's called, that is already taking pre-orders, so that's going to start putting a crunch on because Todd Cochran has already signed up, so he's super excited about that because he only has one choice and it sucks. So, when we start getting these creative ideas, we might see the crunch come down and it might start to affect things too. So fingers crossed. This week's DRM Not Included on F5 Live is proudly powered by Amazon Prime. You get free shipping, but you get a whole lot more. You get free TV, movies, documentaries with Amazon Prime Video. You get free music with Amazon Prime Music. You get a free games and a free Twitch subscription every month to help support the content creator of your choice with Amazon Prime Gaming, and you get a whole lot more. We've got quick links to all these features, plus a 30-day free trial if you are not already a member, and the ability to give it as a gift to friends and family, and all of that is available by going to f5live.tv/prime. All right. Hopefully this will be our last update on this one for a little while. We've been talking about Australia, their publishing law. It's going from draft to consideration. And Australia has called the bluff of several of the big tech companies, Google and Facebook in particular. And Facebook decided this week to show that they're not bluffing. What did they do? They blocked all news sources in the country. That was local and international. Pages for those organizations went dark. They showed there's no content here was the text on their Facebook pages, because obviously let's take CNN or Fox News from a U.S. perspective. Obviously the things they post are a lot of links, and so they went dark. Now it didn't go entirely as planned. Facebook's own page got taken down on Facebook, which is pretty funny. They marked themselves as news, and so they went dark. The screenshots are wonderful. But the move has been received kind of in the middle. One of my favorite comments came from Ozzy Man. He does the reviews, the comedy reviews. If you've not watched him, he's wonderful. He posted this week, "My personal news feed has become wall-to-wall gold, given satire publications are still up." So all of a sudden, his news went away, but comedy stuff from a comedian made him happy. Other people made comments, though, on his post and on others that their non-news pages got muted, within the country, which is obviously not a good thing. The Prime Minister came out and basically said that that Facebook won't hold us hostage. It's our country. We'll do what we want, which is about the response I think we all expected. And then the comments, there's a link to it in the article at PLUGHITZlive.com. The replies on there are just as mixed as they are elsewhere. A lot of people saying, I am absolutely loving seeing just content from my friends and family. I had not realized how much I hated the stuff I was seeing on Facebook until they did this. And then other people saying, how about everybody back off and let me see what I want to see? So it didn't quite go as they planned. I think they were hoping for like a big from the people, and the people were like, I think I like this.
It's interesting, right? I mean, Facebook didn't it start out as really being about personal relationships, not sharing news? And I think that the split in Australia is sort of like the split feeling in all of ourselves when we go to log into Facebook, right? It's like, do I want to be reading, about all the terrible things that are going on in the world? Or do I just want to like be sharing, pictures of my family?
Right.
So obviously Facebook wants you to be seeing everything. And there's obviously been a lot of conversation about the media bubbles that people live in because of Facebook, and how Facebook has led to a lot of
echo chambers,
negative things, echo chambers that go on, people reading all kinds of propaganda and dangerous and anti-science things and all kinds of stuff. And so, the world would probably be better off if people couldn't share news on Facebook.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I say this, and my
my
website, Tom's Hardware, has a Facebook page, and we share news there. So, and people do click it, and so it's of some pretty decent value to us. But I think as an end user of Facebook, on the other hand, would it stop me from going to Facebook? Probably not. So if there were no news there. So it's now we talked about this before.
It might get me back, because I have pretty much abandoned it, other than the business manager, to be able to post this show, for example. I don't spend any time on the consumer side anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the most actually good use of Facebook that I get, which is a fair amount, is like, friends and family who I don't see every day, especially now, but look, here's some pictures of my kids. You may not have seen them in a long time. Now you're keeping up, right? So
I specifically have an alert for you for that reason.
My daughter alert.
Yes.
So the right. So like that kind of stuff. That was what Facebook started as, right? And I always saw Google Plus as like the serious sharing, like, oh, here's my article, Google Plus. I'm not posting any of my kid pictures to Google Plus.
Right.
Sad. I'm still sad Google Plus is not around. I liked Google. I was the only one, but I liked Google Plus. Obviously, as we've spoken about this before, what Australia is asking for is, as Tim Berners-Lee said, against the spirit of the internet. You shouldn't have to pay to tell people where information is. If you take the offline version of this, me telling a librarian, telling you what stack to get a book in, or like, I recommend this book in this stack,
and then charging you a nickel.
Right. But the librarian wouldn't charge you a nickel. The book that you were going to read would charge you a nickel.
Right.
So
interestingly, they wouldn't charge you a nickel. They would charge the librarian a nickel. which is even weirder.
Right. Well,
so,
yeah, I guess if Facebook's the librarian.
So Penguin Publishing would charge the librarian a nickel for them recommending to me a book. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, the other thing is, isn't that somewhat double dipping? Because it's like, I got the traffic and I get paid too. Although, let's be fair, very often people don't click on things. Very, very often people don't click on things, and this is where the problem for news media actually comes in. The problem isn't that people are recommending the business model nuts and bolts problem that I think the companies in Australia probably the government of Australia wouldn't do this unless there were some publishers asking for it. Right. And they must be asking for it because they're looking at a situation where Google and Facebook will publish excerpts of their news, right? The picture, the blurb, the headline. And for some people, that's enough.
That's enough. Especially as we've gone into a headline-centric world where people aren't interested in the details. A lot of people are interested in the headlines, which is why links on Twitter, for example, are enough to satisfy people.
Yeah. So for a lot of people, that's enough. Here's a funny that's enough story that just came up for me this week, without sharing too much secret Tom's Hardware numbers. I was looking at popular search terms that lead people to our website from Google. I got a list of keywords. The top keyword that people used to find our site, to end up on our site, was actually the name of the site, Tom's Hardware. It wasn't, for a lot of sites, they're not looking for that site, they're looking for information, and they land on the site, right? I mean, and a lot of our keywords are like that, but the number one keyword was Tom's Hardware. And you could see how many times people saw you in the results and how many times people clicked. Now, I would expect that it would be close to 100%, because we're the number one result, and that we were exactly what people are looking for, right?
Right.
But there's a significant chunk of people, a significant percentage, that Googled Tom's Hardware, found Tom's Hardware, but didn't click it.
I'm sorry. Oh, that's ridiculous.
Now, you might also ask why they need to Google a website when the website URL is pretty much the name of the site. And I think the reason there is because some people just use their address bar. It's not. I don't think people are going to google.com and typing in. I think people use their address bar. They forget to type in the .com, whatever. Or they just type something in.
Or they put the space.
Yeah. Or they put the space. Like, there were actually different variants of it that were coming up. There was with an apostrophe, without an apostrophe, with a space, without a space. So, people do that, and that's fair, right? But it's just kind of funny that you would get the result of what you want. Well, a few seconds ago when I typed this in, I really wanted to go there, but now that I'm seeing the Google results, forget it. So
it totally makes me think of Parks and Rec. Jerry, when he goes to his email, he goes to Google and types in, "Please go to yahoo.com."
Well, I don't know if this is exactly similar to what I was just talking about, but this just made me think about the IT crowd, where I think somebody on the IT crowd said if you Google, it will cause an explosion or something.
Yeah, that's what they told Catherine. That's not her name on the show. I can't come up with the character's name. That's the actress's name, if that helps.
Yes. If you Google, it will cause some kind of meltdown.
Then she said it at a manager's meeting.
That is my favorite episode of that show, which is when they gave her the internet in a box and they told her it was the actual internet.
The black project box with a blinking LED on it.
Yes. Yes, I mean, I have some. My son and I were thinking, we're going through our project boxes. They have one right here. Like we could make the internet right here.
That's the right size too.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that show.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's this has kind of been the theme of the show tonight. There are so many problems here. There's so many issues with what's happening here, and what has been proposed doesn't seem to solve it. When the guy who created the web is going, this is a fundamental misunderstanding of what the web is. You've missed the mark. But the fact, my takeaway here was the fact they blocked themselves on their own system. Oh, classic. And the fact that the response was mixed. They expected people to be up in arms, and the response was mixed with people going, I like this better. And that is not what they were hoping for. So that may have thrown more fuel on the fire. Obviously, we're going to be keeping an eye on this because, as we said a couple of weeks ago, this could set a precedent in the same way that Maryland could set a precedent for taxing. So we will be keeping a close eye on this story. And that is our show. Thank you to those of you who have joined us live. We always appreciate it. If you didn't and would like to in the future, PLUGHITZlive.com/join us or f5live.tv/join us Friday nights at 9. Friday nights? What is happening? Whoop, whoop, whoop. Let me TiVo and try that again. All right. f5live.tv/join us Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. Oh my goodness, you can chat with us and give us your feedback. We love that. If you can't join us live, that's okay. PLUGHITZlive.com/subscribe. I went away for a second. There you'll see all of our shows, F5 Live, Piltch Point, PLUGHITZ Live Presents, and more. And I cannot believe that it is almost the end of February, and I'm about to say we've still got CES content going up. Luckily, we've only got about a week worth of content left. This is what happens when you do 103 interviews and you publish 3 a day, because that's what Apple Podcasts downloads by default. Lots of stuff there, but we are almost done. But the good news is that all of it is there, and you can listen or watch anywhere that you are. If there's somewhere that we're not, that you would like us to be, let us know. We will try to be there too. And with that, on behalf of the staff that's not here, I'm Scott.
I'm Avram.
And we will see you back next time. Ciao. Hello, YouTube. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of F5 Live, Refreshing Technology. If you did, please subscribe to the channel down below, and of course hit the notification bell, because we know that subscriptions don't mean much on YouTube anymore. If you've got topics that you'd like us to talk about in the future, please comment them down below. And if you'd like to not follow us on YouTube, there's lots of ways that you can follow along with our content by going to PLUGHITZlive.com/subscribe. There you'll see all of our shows and all of the ways that you can watch, listen, and follow along.